Welcome back to the Seth and Chris Show, Wednesday, December 20th, 2017. I'm Seth Leibson. He's Chris Buskirk. Tired of putting the word gate at the end of every scandal based on Watergate, this gate, that gate, the other gate. Our good friend Zuhdi Jasser had a tweet this morning that I think covers the story, what should be the story of the year, with a nice title that we should start using. Hezbollah. Hezbollah. Not bad, right? Dr. Zuhdi Jasser from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Welcome back to the show, brother.
It's great to be with you, brother. Thanks, Seth.
This really should be the story of the year. As the news media has been consumed over nothingness with regard to Russia and collusion, this is an amazing thing. I'll just give you one of the many synopsis I guess I could, but basically the Obama administration stymied a sprawling investigation into the terror group Hezbollah and its highly lucrative drug trafficking networks to protect the Iran nuclear deal. A team at the Drug Enforcement Administration had been working for almost a decade to bring down the Iran-backed militant organization's sophisticated billion-dollar-a-year drug ring, which laundered money and smuggled cocaine into the United States. That's all based
that's all?
Yeah, that's all. This all based on a huge report, 14,000 words, multiple sources at Politico. Holy smokes, Dr. Jasser.
I mean, Seth, there's so many layers to this. First of all, Politico is no bastion of right-wing reporting,
That's
right? So here you have a long-term investigation that interviewed former agents all during the Obama administration, or some active agents that said, they put their life, their blood, their money, their time into resources into exposing a huge ring that went right up to the top. Hezbollah is a Lebanese terror organization that has armed 20 to 30,000 folks fighting in the war for Assad in Syria. That's directly funded by Iran. They found a direct connection of funding of Hezbollah through narco-terror connection through Mexico and Central America and other connections there. And basically that was shut down by sources in the Justice Department and Treasury Department, all at the altar of the nuclear deal.
Right.
And this is probably the third or fourth thing that we know has been shut down at the altar of the nuclear deal, not to mention handing Iran $150 billion, et cetera. And Americans should be outraged. I mean, the reason I said Hezbollah, which is the party of Obama, is that the media this week has a blackout on this story.
Yeah.
It's blacked out. So the party of Obama is the so-called mainstream media that won't even cover this. So imagine the American people where they re-elect or elect new people, a new president to replace the last failure we had, and this new president can't even talk about the sins of the previous because there's blackouts on any review of what was actually done by his justice and law enforcement agents.
That's actually yet a whole other layer to this story, really, when you think about it. I mean, when you talk about what the media covers, what kind of news people receive, they're at the they used to be at the mercy of what the New York Times or CBS would report, Washington Post, perhaps NBC, ABC, no longer. But your point, were it not for talk radio and the web, no one would know about this scandal of a story.
Exactly, and I can tell you, and there are a lot of movies out there about the connections. I mean, even Netflix, right, had the whole thing about Pablo Escobar and how the DEA had its money taken away by the military and others in the 80s because of shifts in policy.
Yep.
And now we know this is no longer not a movie. This is like real life.
Yep.
Agents that probably had lost other agents in trying to reveal this connection. And there's nothing that would save more lives than ending both the flow of narcotics into the U.S. and also the funding of terror against Americans and against Israeli allies in the Middle East, then exposing these types of things and allowing those arrests to come. But all of a sudden, years of agent work had to be shelved because they didn't want the Iranians to get upset while they were arresting Hezbollah agents in Mexico.
Exactly right. No, exactly right, to appease Iran. But at the same time, every element of this story is a horror in and of itself when you think about it. Okay, people have a problem. That's putting it too lightly. But you have problems with Iran. Okay, that's one thing. You have problems with Hezbollah. That's another thing. How about the importation of cocaine into the United States, or at least the exportation of cocaine into the United States? That's yet another problem, as we're seeing rising cocaine use in America. Every element of this thing is terrible. People used to talk about the Iran-Contra deal as a terrible nexus. That was partisan in any event. This is a nonpartisan issue that puts money into Iran's hands, that lets Hezbollah off the hook, and that allows for drugs into the United States.
And, I can tell you as a Syrian American, we wonder, if you talk to Syrians, they will tell you 80% of the fighters in Syria aren't Syrian, either with or against Assad. And at the end of the day, here you have, you wonder why the red line didn't mean anything to Obama. It's because he was fueling the regional conflict that he allowed Iran and Russia to sow. All the meanwhile, now the Democrats are screaming Russia, 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 which was actually was Russia that would have been upset also if we had actually exposed Hezbollah's connection because of their affiliation and fealty for Iran. It's just the connections here would really educate Americans if the media would just cover this like they're doing other things. But it's simply a partisan media operation out of CBS, ABC, and the New York Times, and it's not anything about uncovering the truth.
It's an interesting thing how much cover there is going over the Obama administration now with respect particularly to the war against terrorism, or whatever appellation one wants to use. We were reviewing the new national security strategy yesterday, I suppose it was, and how many times radical Islam or terrorism were mentioned in Obama's compared to, they just didn't want to remind the American people that he thought ISIS was junior varsity. They just didn't want to remind the American people that they were opening up relations with the world's leading sponsor of terror. They just didn't want to remind the American people of that under the Obama administration. And none of it worked out well.
None. And even the Washington Post's anti-Trump writers admitted last week, a few days ago after Trump's strategy came out, and said there's no doubt that it was President Trump that defeated ISIS, because he took off the handcuffs off of our Pentagon, and they were able to decimate ISIS and not just contain them. And it changed the entire dynamic, and now we're talking about a post-ISIS Syria, not a peri-ISIS Syria, and Iraq also. So this is even the Obama folks are admitting that the Trump strategy has been one that America is now feared in the Middle East. Now, hopefully, the Trump strategy and the Trump doctrine that was laid out this week will come to fruition, and they'll start to articulate that policy. You hear the Islamists today already saying that the president's position on Jerusalem is going to basically make us a mockery of the world. The Council on American Islamic Relations is using the talking points of Iran, saying that somehow we are the bullies while the advocates for religious freedom are Iran and Saudi Arabia. Why? Because President Trump's ambassador to the UN had the honor of basically telling them, listen, well, we will no longer pay your aid if you guys are going to vote against us simply having the freedom to move our own embassy, which is brand new for the UN to say that their bullies can't tell us where we can put our embassy.
The free check is over. It's a new day. As long as you're on this point, do you want to say a word on this? This idea of moving an embassy to Jerusalem as the cause of violence in the Middle East. Well, what's been the cause for the past 60 years?
As if they need an excuse to Islamists to find causes for violence. And I think it's insulting and infantilizing to Arabs to say that, well, somehow if we take something off the table that should have never been on the table anyway, which is the recognition of West Jerusalem and Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, where they have their Knesset, the Supreme Court, their ministries, are we saying that it's always been on the table that a negotiation would include Israel somehow delegitimizing its own capital and moving its entire seat of government? That was never on the table. It was
never on the table. Exactly right.
A patronizing approach to the Arab countries, and now they're the ones, the theocrats of the planet, telling us that we can't even recognize what their own capital. Imagine them telling us that we should have our capital in Philadelphia and not in Washington.
Exactly.
That's absurd.
That's absurd. Dr. Jasser, I want to wish you a great holiday season and a happy new year. I want to ask our listeners to check out your website, aifdemocracy.org. JasserOrg, and certainly still time to get it in time for Christmas. Your great book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith. Dr. Jasser, thanks for everything.
Anytime. Thank you, Seth.
All right,
Appreciate it.
brother. You bet. 602-508-0960. We'll be right back.